If you go back to first principles, UBI is an assumed answer to a very real problem. If people have no social safety net and jobs don't exist, and this ability to pull yourself up an economic ladder is totally, outside of the reach of everyone, people eventually fall into hopelessness, crime, despair. That is just a natural state of someone without opportunity. And as we see computers, technology, AI, as we see the shift of jobs happen so quicker, such that, you were trained as a truck driver and now you have to go train as an empathy nurse to replace a robot who has no empathy. It's like, that is literally one of the jobs that's been identified as
Oh, really?
one of the fastest growing jobs in the next 10 years will be what's called an empathy nurse. And it's someone who actually works with the dying, the elderly, and just is there to listen to them as a human empathy node.
And then that'll be taken by AI.
And eventually that's going to be taken by a robot and an AI too.
Yeah.
Is there anything that the robots can't take?
No.
Over time, no.
No. Over time, no. That's the kind of the most and there's a whole bunch of
Sex
people,
workers, all these things will be replaced. I mean, already there's experiments on all of the, like, you just name any function that can be automated will be automated over a course of a period of time. And so what do humans end up being good at?
How close are we to having a robot that can replace a podcast producer?
Not you, Peter. Never.
Never you.
It can't replace my assistant Emma ever. Yeah, I mean, look, it's.
But again,
Yeah.
but just come back to that, because all of the other nonsense we talk about is that thing happening at a structural level that it will not stop.
Yeah.
It's going to keep on going. It's going to move at an incredible pace. And every politician there will tell you, we're going to create more jobs. We're going to create more jobs, more jobs, more jobs. We're going to drive more growth. And what they're really saying is we're going to decrease your real wages through inflation to pay you less to be able to be on a mouse wheel forever. That's what they're really saying, because that's what the more jobs are doing. Well, AI is going to take it. Well, technology is going to take them anyways. And that's why. So even Andrew Yang, he came out with the same thing I came out with. I think World Economic Forum understands the same thing I came out with. But the free market of ideas, I just had a different solution. And my solution was radical. That why wouldn't we let prices fall as that happened and save our time? And it sounds really radical, but it's not radical at all. It's
more importantly, by creating a culture with the right incentives, where you create a culture of ownership that recognizes the time preference of actual sound money.
Mm-hmm.
You can totally change a lot of these social engineering or societal issues that you want to deal with. Start to actually take on new meaning.
They fall away.
But things that seemed impossible before, actually, you can start to reapproach them and say, what if? I'm not saying we have all the answers, right? I am not one of these people who thinks every single solution gets solved with Bitcoin. But I think a lot of things that didn't work in the past, because they were all based off perpetuating a lie around bad incentive design, bad economics, and keeping this image that somehow the government's going to pick winners and losers. And if you just work hard enough, and if you just are honest, you can make it too.
Jeff, look, can I just ask you a question? Because you mentioned talking about the system is designed in a way to keep us almost reliant upon the government and desperate, and it's a perpetual problem that gets increasingly worse for us. Is your belief that, like, when you say it's there by design, there are people actually want this to be, or is this just like a natural outcome from the incentives of the system?
And we're trying to take it out of our own, to remove our own bias, and just imagine another planet.
Yeah,
right? Another planet trying to move to a multi-planetary species.
Okay.
You would assume that planet would first creatures living on that planet would have to assume kind of tribes or groups to be able to protect themselves, develop villages. Dunbar's lumber here, but then they would expand, and to trade between other groups, they'd have to agree on something as a currency. In that currency, it would probably be the hardest material. It might start at seashells or whatever in another planet, but then it would over time form the hardest currency. That currency couldn't be moved around at the velocity. That currency couldn't be moved around at the velocity of the population growing and expanding global trade on that planet. So you would build on top of it. You'd build a credit-based system. So now you could get velocity in your money, so you could move faster. But the credit-based system on top of that hard money would be always subject to human nature, boom bust cycles. And as it got too big, the boom cycle got too big, and the incentives to remove the hard money from it would just naturally would not, and then that society would go to war to be able to decide the winner of the war and come back to hard money.
There are sci-fi books that talk about this on like Mars, and the hardest asset they use is actually oxygen.
So no matter where you are on a planet, if you had to get off to a multiplanetary species, the only way to get to a multiplanetary species, because our human bodies can't stand the time to get to other planets, so would have to be our consciousness would move into robots. We would be merging with machines and such. We don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's coming. And the transition step from the time as that society built the technology to be able to do 3D printing of asteroids and materials and form factor and all this technology to be a multiplanetary species would be the exact same time that if they didn't move to a currency that allowed that technology to enable them to do that, they would blow up their planet. And through that kind of thought experiment, because that technology to be able to do that allows us to, we don't need human labor. But the entire construct of the free market was around the division of labor. And the division of labor, how much our wages are all over the world, was a huge part of getting there. Same thing would happen on any other planet. So the same thing, that technology component, to be a multiplanetary species, if that society couldn't transition into something away from that hard material, that the network itself could provide the velocity, because that's what Bitcoin does. Right? The network, you can have unlimited velocity and money from the network, traded all peer-to-peer all around the world. Unless you could do that, you probably what that means is the great filter is in front of us. And what you're seeing playing out in the world right now, and the risk of real war all over the world, is actually what I think is happening, and it's caused by that exact same thing. It's caused by technology advancing at a pace that requires a different system.
And so this same technology curve, this same shift that's happening, the trends that Jeff talks about, they certainly give rise to this idea that, digital scarcity ends up having to be a precursor to actually building the idea exchange, the highly functioning society that allows at scale us to manage the transition into the future. Without it, there is inevitably a move towards perpetuating the lie, continuing the lie. And at one point, the technologies of asymmetric warfare and mass destruction get big enough, far enough, that if you have not caught up in moving away from the lie and actually moving everyone up the economic ladder so that there is some sort of sense of shared consciousness, shared responsibility, shared hope, that is predominant. It doesn't have to be everywhere, because, you have to be a realist, but it has to be more the default than the rarity. Because if it is the default behavior and there is an overall sense of hope and optimism, and it is being seen as more equal opportunity with lots of those economic ladders to climb up of, then people are going to spend their time just trying to land on the square with the economic ladder. They're not going to spend all their time looking over their shoulders to see, did I land on a snake, and who do I need to take down with me if I'm going to be going down the snake?
But if this does help everyone climb the economic ladder, the incentive therefore is for politicians who want to be successful and maintain a successful career in politics and have a legacy, that Bitcoin adoption is a logical solution.
That's what's happening, but it's happening at a rate. The rate that happens is exactly what Austin's talking about. The rate that happens, and it'll happen through incentives, same incentives, because it gives a politician that couldn't get elected under the other system power to tell the truth and expose a lie and get elected from this. And as more and more of us choose that, it happens. And then the incentives are aligned where instead of citadels, every different country choosing Bitcoin, or a very different nation or network of people choosing Bitcoin, is going to design the system that they want with representation. And one politician might say, we need 20% flat tax on everything we do to be able to provide all of these services. And we will vote with our feet and our businesses to move there if we like that. And another politician might say, no, we can do it for 5%. And you're just going to scorecard your opportunities, and you're going to say, this is the domain I want to move to.